When I look back on my life, I realise that it's been built on my strengths, but it's also been influenced by the challenges that I've faced. By understanding those challenges, by dealing with them, by learning from them, I have become a stronger person. You know, we can all do that.
So 90% of us think that winning's important. Warrior is the strongest male feature of Australian men.
In my work, I spend a lot of time talking to people from all walks of life. And what I've learned is that whatever our circumstances, whatever we do for a quid, wherever we come from, we all face similar fears and similar challenges. That's the message I want to share with you, that as men, we're actually all the same, and that our fears and challenges evolve over our lifetimes, but they are more profound at certain stages in our lives. These are their stories, and my story. They are the stories of men at different stages in their lives. They're the stories of you and me, in fact, all of us. These are the stages of men. The first stage of a man's life, birth to mid-teens, is mostly luck. We don't choose our parents or ethnic background, whether we're rich or poor. We're lucky to be born or live in Australia, and so it goes, all luck. In our mid-teens, we start to make choices for ourselves. We think about the future and where we want to be. We begin to determine who we will become. This adolescent period is a critical stage in any man's life, a stage when some pretty significant decisions are made. A career, choosing a partner, a marriage. It's a stage a lot of men grapple with, but we'll come to that a bit later. I started off my working life as a heavy diesel fitter, an apprenticeship, and like lots of blokes back then, an early marriage. I was 21 when I got married, and I'm still married today to the same girl. For a partnership to succeed, both partners need to commit. It can be hard going. Some people realise they don't have this commitment when problems arise, and it can destroy their relationships. This can be one of life's big challenges, but we learn by these experiences. I guess I was lucky to have a partner with similar values.
We had 3 sons, and life was good. I loved my family, I loved my career. When I was 28, I hurt my back. A fitter working with heavy machinery can't really operate with back problems. I had to change my career. That was a big decision. Whatever I did would involve study. That's a hard call when you've got a young family. My wife and I understood that, but we really didn't have much option.
In the end, I decided to do a teaching degree. It was an interesting time. I was studying. I was supporting a young family. Tough? Yes, but a good time in my life as well. When I completed my teaching qualification, I started teaching mechanics and welding at an agricultural college. So I had a new career, but it merged very nicely with my old career. My boys were growing up. We were enjoying a family life together, and I was working hard. Over the next 25 years, I worked my way up the ladder and ultimately became the Director of Agricultural Education for the Department of Education and Training, and I held that position for about 10 years.
And then, in September 2001, after 35 years with the department, I was made redundant. For a bloke, that's a really hard thing to cope with. All the things you've worked for so many years suddenly is seen as worthless.
We men don't realise how devastating the loss of a career can be. A very significant portion of a man's identity is his career. Our women don't like to hear this. Their identity is more relationship-based. A few months after this, I accepted a job. It was with the doctors of the Wheat Belt, to try and do something about reducing suicidal behaviour. I've spent years trying to make a real difference in people's lives. It's probably been the happiest and most rewarding part of my professional life. But when I think back, I've been through each of the stages of a man's life, and I've learnt what my vulnerabilities and strengths are. Let's explore those stages through the stories of some other men. You'll recognise the stories. The young adult years are the decision-making, risk-taking years, and for many young men, the decisions and risks taken during this time will impact on the rest of their lives. We make career choices, and despite the apparently growing number of people who have options of multiple careers, most of us stick with the career choices we make when we are young. We often move around within an industry, but tend to stay with our passion. And it's also the time when many young men are choosing their life partners. For many young men, it can be a time in their lives when they feel a bit at sea, a time of challenges and risk-taking, sometimes positive and sometimes dangerous.
My name's Anthony, I'm 28 years of age, I run a trucking company, I'm married, I've got a 14-month-old son and another one on the way. The thing about driving trucks that I enjoy the most is I love working with my dog, I love working with livestock, and I like meeting new people, you know. And the guys in our industry, I love them, they're the good, hard-working fellas. I think I'm a little bit of a daredevil. I like to take a bit of a risk. I like being my own person. I like having a go at things, yeah, for sure. Giving it my all. I like motorbikes because I enjoyed the thrill, the air rushing through you, the adrenaline, and the fitness side of it's a good thing when you're a truckie as well. I recently had a motorbike accident which landed me in hospital. I was out with a mate on a new high-powered bike, trying to tame it, and come off second best. I monitored it out and landed on my head and ended up crushing 2 vertebrae in my spine. As soon as I had the accident, I immediately thought, what have I done? I've put my family in jeopardy. You know, I'm the sole provider at the moment. My wife's in hospital with a 6-month-old sick baby. We've got all this debt on taking on 2 houses and 2 trucks, and I think I continually punished myself for it. I couldn't believe I was that silly at the time. It was terrifying. I got down to the point where I just couldn't even function. And my initial reaction was to just clam up, and then the pressure just built up and built up. Yeah, I just felt like I was in this continual fog that I couldn't climb out of it, and it really wasn't until I got to desperation point on having to do something that I turned to friends and guys that I admired and actually started to talk, which was the last thing I wanted to do. And as soon as I did that, it was just like all that pressure that was building up and just blocking me from getting on and doing what I needed to do was just lifted. I suppose they reminded me who I was and that I can do it again. And stop beating yourself up over it and get on with it, I suppose. You know, analyse your problem. Remember that you've still got a fantastic wife and a child. They're the most important things. Keep them close and build from it. I think that's where I really realised how good a partner I had in Olivia, because she saw me at the most vulnerable stage, to the point where I felt absolutely useless. And she still loved me and knew that it wasn't me, it was just a situation and I needed to pick myself up. For sure, I realise now, like as a young fella, you think you're indestructible, you think you're bulletproof. But it takes a bit of a shock like that to the system to realise that you're not. And you realise the gravity of your position in the family, I suppose. You feel like that there are other people around you that depended on you. And you need to be there for them as well, I suppose. Over the meadow, cows answered. The motto I now live by is keep your friends close. Keep your loved ones close. And don't let anything get in the way of that. Because that's where life's all about.
What my years of experience in the field of men's health have taught me is that when it comes to women and relationships, a lot of young men have trouble distinguishing between lust and love. This is not a criticism, it's just one of those things young men need to be aware of. They need to understand the process. If they knew how easy and risky it is to make decisions based on physical attraction alone, rather than things like shared values, chances are they'll make better decisions. And it's worth understanding that there is a fundamental difference between men and women here. Women are much more insightful when it comes to relationships. I see an awful lot of young men who don't really know what they want to do. They've started on a career path. They're looking for a companion. They feel the need to share their lives, but they're not really sure how to do it. They need to learn how to manage a range of conflicting and confusing messages, as well as a range of emotions. It's a difficult time learning how to master being a young adult, and chances are that'll set them up to deal with the future stages of manhood. This is the period we call the treadmill years, a period of hard work, of trying to be a success and making a quid, feeling the pressure of being a partner, a husband, a father, the breadwinner. This is the time when career opportunities are the greatest, earning capacity is rising, and your skill levels peak. This is the period of a man's life when it is most difficult to keep everything in balance. To a certain extent, life is more settled, but a host of personal issues start to come into play. There are often relationship issues with your children as well as your partner. There is a sense that there is no room for a personal life beyond being the family provider. It can be a lonely time for a man. And when disappointments and setbacks come, they can be pretty hard to deal with. This is the midlife crisis time. This is also the time when a man is most at risk of suicide. 80% of suicides in Australia are men, and most occur in this vulnerable treadmill stage of a man's life. The sense of being alone with his problem and no one seems to care causes men to consider desperate solutions and destroys many lives unnecessarily.
Hi, my name is John, I'm 55. I'm currently the Chief Executive of the Oakajee Port and Rail Project. Prior to that, I was the Chief Executive of the Chamber of Commerce and Industry in WA and also the State Under Treasurer. These are the years where life seems to be about work. It does have an urgency about it and an intensity about work because we've reached a stage in our careers where we're probably as senior as we're going to be. Many of us are in significant executive roles or in our professions or trades where we've reached the top of our game, if you like. It also brings with it a maturity in the non-work life. Normally in your partnership relationships, your children are growing up, they're getting into stages of late teens, early 20s, they're having their own children. And that brings pressures, which inevitably come back to the main breadwinner because you feel a responsibility to keep everything going. I don't think I've worked harder in the last 5 years, and I take back to the period when I was the State Under Treasurer. when I was a mere 40-year-old. That's 15 years ago now. I was pretty busy then. I'm busier now because I've taken on an even larger job.
Hi, John.
Hi, Glenn, how are you?
All the way through my career, I've had a concern about failure, and that's what's driven me. And I suppose I've been lucky in that, you know, through hard work, I've had success and good fortune. But every day, with this current project, for instance, you know, we've got great challenges in front of us regularly, and the last thing we want to do is fail in this task. So, you know, it's all hands on deck, and they're there 24/7. In my case, I've always had a pretty good work-life balance. It's a very personal issue, and you need to manage it yourself. I think family life is so critically important to men in particular. To have the love and affection of a good woman, I think, is extremely important, or a good partner is extremely important. Having your children understanding you and being prepared to give you tolerance, give you love, and I think also give you respect is extremely important. I've been very fortunate in having all of that.
Your Excellency, the Governor-General has approved the following awards. To be appointed as officers in the General Division of the Order of Australia, Mr John Langeland, AO, for distinguished service to business, commerce and government, particularly through leadership and management roles, and to the community of Western Australia, primarily to the arts through WA Ballet, to health and to education. Mr Langeland.
The Order of Australia was significant for me. It was recognition by peers and others who you work with in the community. That's the most satisfying part about it. To have received such a high honour for what I just love doing, that is doing my day job, the executive roles, plus doing the community work, yeah, I got a real buzz out of that. And it was probably the happiest time I've had for a long time, because so many of my friends made contact and said, well done, congratulations. Most recently, I suppose I've reached the age of 55. I'm starting to worry about my own health. I'm doing a lot of proactive, preventative health work for myself, which takes a bit of time. So that involves a bit of exercise, but most particularly it involves medical checks and those sort of things. I think it's really important for us blokes, as we get to this stage, to spend a bit of time and make sure we're reading ourselves, make sure we're understanding how we're going, both mentally and physically, and to deal with it if you need to. I think for men, you know, I think a real sign of a healthy male is to say to one of his good mates, look, I'm not travelling that well, this or that's happening, and talk about it and try and get something done about it. In my case, it happened a couple of years ago when I met my now current doctor, who's a good mate. And we talk regularly now about health generally and about my health in particular. So, you know, that's been a real revelation for me.
We can learn a lot from men who have been through this phase of their lives. They come out the other side re-energised and revitalised. Career opportunities can be taken, they can be left. Other things in our lives can take priority, like family. We learn that success only ever strokes the ego, your ego, and your family would appreciate you and your time far more. We also learn about balance in our lives. When we deal with the problems in our lives, it builds our character, and our character built this way makes us stronger.
This is the period when the joy of a man's life should come to full bloom. He is a wise man, a man who has lived his life through the turbulent years and learnt some valuable lessons. A period when he can enjoy the pleasure of a comfortable and loving relationship with his wife or partner. When the years of battles with teenage children are long gone and a mature and tender relationship has taken its place. When a man can cherish his grandchildren and teach them how to dream. Sadly, there are a lot of men who see this period of their lives as the end, that their time of being valuable as a contributing member of the workforce and family is over. and they feel an overwhelming sense of worthlessness. Over recent years, our society has tended to denigrate the older generation, but actually, this group is the most important resource we have. They can impart that most precious commodity, wisdom. New knowledge is the province of the young. Experience comes in the treadmill years. Wisdom resides with people who have experienced both, the elders.
My name's Bill, and I'm 86. I've worked in the engineering. I was an engineer, and then I went into the timber industry for a while, and then I worked in the Air Force for only 3 years, and then I went into the timber business again, and then I went into engineering. That's heavy earth moving. The job I enjoyed the most was heavy earth moving, I think, because it had a lot of variety in it. I think it was very satisfying. It was up to you to make it satisfying. That lifetime of work has taught me a lot. It taught me tolerance, to say the least. And of course, in anybody's life, they need to be tolerant. Family is important to me still. Even I haven't got many siblings left. There's only 2 left. But my own family, pretty well spread out over Australia, and it's nice to have somewhere to bed down when you get there, and they, generally speaking, they will say, well, thanks, Dad, and that means a lot. My favourite projects, I like to think that they involve my family when they call out and say, I want to put this, I can't fit the bonnet on my car, it just won't fit. I had a praying with it, and it just won't fit. And it's nice to be able to go up and say, well, I remember 10 years ago I had just the same problem with one of my boys. I like to think that, and somebody wants to borrow your trail or borrow your ute, or, and it's nice that they come to you. Interacting with the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren is a revelation in itself, because you just don't know what they're going to say, and it puts you on your toes to know how to answer them. Good mates are an essential, and you've got to cultivate them. For a man to have friends, he must show himself friendly. It's just so good to think, well, I'll go and talk that over with Harry, or I'll go and talk that over with Les, and just to have somebody will open the door and ask you in for a cup of coffee. That's all you need. I get a lot out of the meeting down at the shed. We called it the shed. And you get people's problems, and they speak very freely down there, and you get an idea of where people are. It's nice to just to listen to what other people have got to say and try and contribute. It's important that we stay active, because I don't think old people ever outlive their usefulness. There is so many little things, and the little things will grow into big things when you go to do the little thing. You find that there's something else you can do. I would say that life is all about love. I think when you bring it down to the nitty-gritty, if you show love to other people, they will show love for you, and that gets you out of a lot of scrapes. I don't think you could be complete without the love and devotion of a wife. They need to be reminded or told that you do love them, and fairly often, and to show that love. The love continues to blossom when you're 86.
What this story tells us is that the end is really the beginning. For older men, the arrival of grandchildren is an opportunity to make up for that lost time lost during the treadmill years. But most importantly, older men have time to tell their grandchildren stories about their parents, stories about their names, stories about the past, stories about the future, and stories about all the things in life they can look forward to. The most important gift we can give to our children and our grandchildren are our stories.
Men in their older years have much to offer. They can help men of all ages understand some basic differences between men and women, how to honour the women in their lives, how to make informed decisions, how to think clearly and concisely, how to tackle some of those big life issues. Older men can help young men grapple with their spirituality, the mystery of life, and through periods of grief in its many forms, which so many men can't deal with.
For me, the death of a child was a defining moment in my life. Between our second and third child, we had a boy who went full term and died soon afterwards. It was my first experience with profound grief, and it taught me a lot about myself. It taught me also about balance in my life, and it taught me about the tenderness of a man.
In all the ages of men, we have much to offer each other. We can help each other. We can learn from each other. There are always some challenges, of course. The Aussie male is very much a warrior, and as such, often battles on alone. As men, we need to understand and value our mates. We need to identify who our mates really are. Most men need 3 mates. Someone about the same age going through the same stage in life. An older man, a mentor, and a woman, because they can help us understand our emotions. Another challenge is getting young men to listen to the wisdom of their elders. So many young men are paying too much attention to peer group pressure, basing life decisions on what their mates think, rather than the careful consideration of the facts. Peer groups are where we find friends, not wisdom about the future. As older men, it's also important to respect our young men. Talk sensibly to them. Don't talk down to them, but engage them in meaningful ways. It doesn't matter if we're young or old. Don't let it get too much before you talk to a mate. Know who your mates are and seek wisdom.
You know, it doesn't matter if you work in the construction industry, in mining, in forestry, in fisheries, in agriculture, in finance. As blokes, we're all the same under the skin. As women tell us that they are. And we can learn a lot from women in this regard. We can talk, we can share our experiences, we can give advice, we can give comfort. Through all the aspects of a man's life, we can be there for each other as mates and share those things through all the stages of men.